Hello again. We are back for the second recording on the topic of file reading, but now with a focus on CSV files, comma separated values files. These files have .csv extension. This is an example. It kind of shows an Excel type file by default because Excel can be used to open these files, but I'm going to show, let's see over here. So this is an example file. I'm going to say show file extensions. They typically have .csv, but if you don't have extensions, they're just going to show us that. If you double click on the file, it's by default going to open in Excel. So this would be the file. But you can also right click and say open with, and then choose a text editor like WordPad or Notepad. And that didn't work. Open with Notepad, okay? It kind of shows you the contents of the file. And the reason these files are known as .csv files is because they actually use commas to separate values. So every line is an entry where the first value is the value for the first entry under the first column. So here, all the first entries before the first comma are the names of students. Ali, Jen, Ben, Lee, etc. And then the second entry will be, in this case, the corresponding grade. So this is the same data that we've used in previous examples, students and their grades. But now we want to read this information from a CSV, comma separated values file. It doesn't matter how you open the file, if you open it here or if you open it in Excel, it's all the same. Just note that all of your entries should have the same number of comma separated values by default. You could have more than 2 commas, of course. Like, let's say you could have Ellie 99.5, and then you could have the major CSCI, and this would be a major over here, math, and so on. But provided that all the entries have the same comma separated values per line. So with this, I'm going to close the file. Again, note that the file resides in the same folder as the program that's going to run. And eventually what I want to do when I run the program, I want to be able to produce 2 lists. Okay, the first one containing the names, Jen, Ellie, Jen, Ben, Lee, and then the second list contains the corresponding grade. So Ellie has 99.5 scored, Jen 78.5, 78.25, Ben 76, and so on, such that the 2 lists are parallel lists. So whenever we're talking about reading CSV files, we're always thinking of reading into parallel lists. So with this, I'm going to stop the program, and we're going to work on it together to complete it. This basically will be similar to the previous recording in the sense that reading the files the process should be the same, but what we split on later on is going to be a bit different. Since we're going to be reading information into lists, we need to create those lists first. So I've got a student list and a score list, which are going to be parallel lists. I'm going to open the file for reading again, and in this case, I need to read this file called student scores. Again, you don't see an extension, but properties, it should say it's .csv. You need that extension to be able to find the file. So it's called student scores .csv, and we need to open the file for reading. Just like, again, we did before, we're going to take the in-file variable and read all the contents as a string into a single variable. And here's where things start to differ. Now, because of the way we're going to be doing things, not in this example, where's the text file? Open. Okay, now I'm showing the file, the CSV file in Excel format. So what I need to do is I need to read this into a list such that this would be the first entry in the list, this would be the second entry in the list, the third entry in the list, and then I'll go over all the entries in the list, separate the name from the grade. So the first step is to read this whole thing as a single string, and then split that by a new line character so that every entry or every line becomes its own entry in the list. And then after that, I'll go over those entries and then split them. So now what I need to do is I need to split specifically on \n, which is the character that Python uses to separate lines. So far, this is what we have. I'm going to comment the program, run what we have so far. Okay, so this is the variable. The two lists down here, the file string would be all the entries, and notice that every line is separated by /n, so I can easily use /n to separate the lines. And when I did the split on /lines, I was able to get Ellie and her grade as the first entry, comma, Jen, her grade, second entry, Ben, his grade, third entry, and so on and so forth, which matches the file over here. So now, the next step, which is where things get a bit more complicated, is that now I need to go over all of those rows and split every row on a comma so that I can separate the name, put it in the names list, from the grade, put it in the grades list. So that's what's going to happen next. For row in all rows, so for every row that you've got over here, for every entry in this list, okay, take the entry, so that's going to be row, okay, and split it on comma. Okay, so take Ellie 99.5, split it on comma. The first entry now in the resulting list, student info, is going to be the name. So I take student info 0 and I put it in the student list. And then I take the second entry in the list, student info 1, and put it in the score list. Okay? So again, I'm going to stop here, go through the program again so far, trace it using debug mode. Okay, we've got an error down here. Leftover comments. Okay, so step over. Okay, this is the student list being created. Score list created. In file is the program variable containing information about the file. This is all the contents of the file as a string. Take this string, split it on new line to get a list of the entries. So this is now the list of the entries. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go inside the rows one by one. So this is list all rows. Row first is going to be the first entry, and step over. So first row is Ellie 99.5. Now we're going to split that on comma. I'm going to get, so this is row, and student info now is going to be the outcome of splitting this list, not list, string on comma. So that's going to give me a list of 2 entries because I only have 1 comma, 2 values. The first one, location 0, would be the name, and then the second one would be the grade. Okay, step over, put student info 0 in the student list, and put student info 1 in the score list. Now the loop is going to continue. Row is going to become Jen 7/8/25, so the second entry. Update row. Split row over here, get a new student info list. Take Jen's name, append it to the student list. Take Jen's grade, append it to the score list. Row becomes band 76, and the process continues. Okay, until eventually we exhaust all the entries and terminate the program. So there you have it. Thank you much for listening so far.